Well, some important information for this tale. For any history fanatics out there, I live in an old as shit fishing town in East England, notorious for being haunted. Nearly every alley has a story, and a popular place for ghost hunters. Obviously, this is a real story that happened. This information just makes it a little creepier walking at night. Also, this was about 3 years ago. I was working at a big retail store in the UK. I was a night shelf stacker basically. Deliveries would usually come in about 8 p.m. and I would work until around 2 a.m. putting it away, logging on the system, blah blah. Anyway, some nights the deliveries would turn up later and I would work later. Good money. I had no priorities, whatever. The night this happened, the delivery turned up late, at 10 p.m. This was a ball ache for a lot of us, since we knew we would be leaving later than usual, but the general consensus was again, good money, whatever. So we didn't end up finishing up until about 3:30 or 4 a.m., sometime around there. I usually biked home, so this was no trouble. Finished up with the other guys, and I had a cigarette as the various people left in cars and their own bikes, which was usually the case. I then proceeded to hop on my bike and start on the journey home. I got maybe 20 feet before I realised my tyre was flat. Great. I thought what should be a 10-minute bike ride would now turn into a 30-minute walk in pitch black streets. The streetlights turn off at midnight here, except for main roads. So off I went, walking with my bike, and the first 20 minutes of the journey went fine. Then I started feeling strange. It was rare I feel superstitious, but something just sat wrong all of a sudden. I was walking on a main road, lights on, and went past the town's college. It was two empty medium-sized car parks outside and a large bike shed, but always had a light inside for some reason. My home was literally around the corner from the college, so I tried to shrug off the feeling as I was almost home, but there was definitely more checks over the shoulder. I strolled past, bike in hand, when I heard something weird. Whistling. It was slow, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand. I came to a realization after my friend showed me the Reddit comment called The Whistler, that it was the exact whistle in the video he uploaded. So this just makes it weirder for me now. I immediately spun my head towards the source, the bike shed, and what I saw was a girl. She must have been a teenager. Her head was poking up from a wall next to the bike shed, about 100 feet from me. Her hair was dark because she was silhouetted by the light of the bike shelter, and her eyes were dark. As soon as I saw her, she darted down as if hiding. Bear in mind, I had seen no one else this night. Not many people wander around at 4 a.m. in winter in a small town. I felt creeped the fuck out immediately and started to walk a lot faster with my bike towards home. As I kept peering back and walking, I saw her pop her head up once more and dart back. As I got out of view of the college, I turned into my pitch black road. There was a single lit street lamp that could be seen behind me on the main street, and I saw something even weirder. It looked like an older man, 50s or 60s, standing slightly to the side of the street lamp, as if he was trying to stay out of sight. He was standing with something in between both of his hands, like a piece of string or wire, or something, and he was turning it with his palms, while smiling at me. He didn't move at all, just stood there. I couldn't take the weirdness anymore, and just broke off into a sprint with my bike. I ran down my alley that led me into my back gate. My heart was racing as I bolted the gate behind me. I sat for a moment and listened for any sound of being followed. For a good 2 minutes it was silent. The air was weirdly still for a winter night. Then I heard that fucking whistling again. It sounded like it was at the bottom of my alleyway. I lived about halfway up the road, so it was quite a way away. I just slowly walked to my back door with as little noise as possible, just in case whoever it was listening out for which house I'd gone into. I don't know, tired me as extra cautious, I guess. I have no idea what those two people were doing out at that time. My brain was racked, all sorts of possibilities when I think of it. Was she hiding from the man? She looked about early teens, maybe. Or did they know each other? I don't know. I just can't help feeling I was caught in the middle of something. 4/10/21. I work part-time at a grocery store, and I usually work the closing shift. About 30 minutes to close, a lady comes to my register. She's polite, friendly, and seemed very normal. She pays for her groceries. I hand her the receipts. She leaves. Seemed normal to me. About 10 minutes after we close, I'm headed out to my bike. But she stopped before me. I leave the store, claiming that she had left her phone inside and that she needed to get it. She hadn't left her phone. It would have been at my register, and I had thoroughly cleaned it, as well as its surrounding area before I clocked out. But I offered to go in and check anyway, because maybe it had been dropped on the floor. I wanted to go home, and luckily my manager offered to call her phone, so I headed to my bike to get going. The moment I take the lock off my bike, she drives over to me, making small talk. It's a bit weird, seeing as I'm clearly trying to get home, and she doesn't know me at all. She tells me that I have a cool bike, asking me where I got it. I explain to her that it's electric, and that I just got it from Amazon. She tells me that she didn't know they made electric bikes, but then tells me a few minutes later how she's been looking to get an electric bike for a while now. She asked to take a picture of my bike, and then suddenly asked me why I was still wearing a mask, going on how about it could give me a sinus problem. I decided not to take it off, since she's taking a photo, which I noticed the camera is aimed more so at me than my bike, even though I stepped away so that she could get a better view of the bike itself. Unknown to me, my manager and another worker were watching this whole interaction. And after this woman left, went over to me and asked if I was okay. I didn't really think much of it, telling them that it was fine and that all she wanted to know about was my bike. I headed home, but on my way, I thought a bit more about the interaction. She came back to the store claiming to have lost her phone, but had it on her the whole time. She took a picture with it. She kept repeating my name in our conversation as often as she could, almost like she was trying to memorize it. She took a photo of me as well as my mode of transportation, all while trying to get me to take my mask off right before taking it, as if to be able to see my entire face. Sort of creepy. Even weirder was when I turned back to the store to see if she was still there, when I saw a police car, which, after leaving the parking lot, turned on its sirens and sped off in the direction of the lady that left in. Maybe I'm overthinking, but this interaction just seemed really strange. Anyway, let me know if you think I'm overthinking things, or if you'd be creeped out too. Edit. Thank you for all the replies. I figured I should add in more general info so you can get a better idea of the situation. I'm a college-aged male and live in a safe area. I had never seen that woman before that night. My co-workers hadn't ever seen her before either. Update 4/12/21. I was called in earlier asking if I'd be available to close tonight. I'll let everyone know if I see her again. Update 4/12/21. Worked a couple hours tonight and closed. No sign of that woman, and nobody saw her last night either. There was a man who came in around the same time she had, 9:30, but was hanging around the store until I left, around 10:10. He was standing there at the front, and then went over to his bike after myself and the other employees left the store. I got on my bike and made eye contact with him before leaving. He left a little bit after I did, but as far as I could see, he wasn't following me. This happened about a month ago. I work half-night shifts in a UK chain where I generally finish around 2 a.m. It was a still Friday night. Living in a coastal town, these are somewhat rare to come by this time of year. No single gust of wind, not a cloud in the sky. I finished my last cigarette before the peaceful moonlit bicycle home. Or so I thought. Now I should note that I have had many issues biking home at night before, so I had known from previous experience to just stick to the main roads where the streetlights remain illuminated, guiding me home through a troubled town. So that's what I did. Kept to the main road and then followed it up to a steep incline that passes by a large park known and loved to the town. When I say park, I mean a fenced off big fuck off field type bastard with a children's play area, slides, swings and shit, and a little car park. The park is completely dark as usual, but the only exception is a pair of car headlights that are clearly parked at the child's play area. Must have been at least 200 metres away from me biking on the lit road that runs past it, flipping big park. The road is quite steep, and I'm putting the deltoids and the glutes and the flutes to good work, pushing up this big bugger, when I start hearing a shouting towards me, coming from the car. It is far away, so it sounds like unintelligible hooting and grunting. One clearly was a bloke, and another clearly a woman by the pitch of their voices. I think nothing of it, as they are clearly not cries for help, more just likely just a couple of crazy kids up to no good, making mischief. I ignored them and carry on pushing up the road. I got a bit concerned when I hear the slamming of their car doors and a roar of the engine as they speedily tear through the field to make its way up the road to me, the unsuspecting cyclist. I push it harder, just past 3/4 of the way up this road, almost at the top. I hear them exit the park and start making their way up the road, hollering, shouting, laughing and revving the engine. It was like some Planet of the Apes shit. As I got to the top, they were nearly right behind me and I quickly turned onto a pedestrian path. They razzed past, no indication of slowing down, no indication at all for that matter, as they pulled onto a large roundabout at the top of the road. Bloody savages. They were shouting all sorts of nonsense, but the one thing I did make out was, where the fuck did he go? After I'd turned down the alley and turned my bike lights off. They ended up looping around trying to find me for a few minutes, before zooming off, and I promptly made my way home. A couple of days later, I heard that a fire engine had been called to that park about an hour after the incident, as the child's play area was ablaze, and they caused thousands of pounds worth of damage to the children's play equipment. Makes me wonder if they were chasing me down thinking I witnessed their vandalism. Would they have tried to hit me off my bike, as they are clearly demented enough to burn down a kid's play area? I reported what I saw to the police and heard nothing back. I stick to the darker roads now just in case I ever bump into those rascals once more. In May of 2009, I went to Myrtle Beach with my family. The first day was like any other typical family vacation. After almost everyone was in bed, my mum, my sister, 13, and I, 15, could hear music from our motel room. Our mum suggested that my sister and I walk down the street and check out whatever was going on. We were staying at the Sea Banks Inn on South Ocean Boulevard, and it was about 1 a.m. We got ready, my mum gave my sister her phone in case of an emergency, and out we went. First, we had to walk down a section of dimly lit sidewalks and motels. There was almost like a hard cut-off where there were suddenly plenty of streetlights and a lot going on. It was pretty crowded, with people filing in and out of bars, restaurants, and typical tourist gift shops. We were in awe of it all, going in and out every gift shop along the way. This was nothing like the small mountain town we were from. About halfway down the lit-up area, we ran across a group of men in their early 20s, sitting on the steps of a bar. A couple of them made comments about my outfit, but we ignored them, since they were adults. As we walked away from them, one of them yelled, "We got a bitch." I thought it was him being angry that I ignored him, and we continued walking. Almost immediately afterward, two different guys approached us. They were both much taller than us. One was a guy in his early to mid-20s with short hair and was a little chunky. The other was in good shape, looked maybe 20, and had medium-length dreads. The one with dreads started asking me questions like what I was doing out so late, did I have a boyfriend, and if I wanted to party. I just said that I was shopping, and that I was 15, so leave me alone. Stupid answer in hindsight. The chunky guy stayed a couple of steps behind the one doing the talking at all times. They both laughed at my response and kept trying to talk to me. My sister and I were both clearly uncomfortable, so we walked away. They stayed where they were, so we didn't think much else of it. We walked down a little further and checked out another shop that was still open. My sister checked the chime on our mum's phone and realised it was almost 3 a.m. Since it was getting late and we were getting close to another dark part of the street, we decided to go to the last shop before the next dimly lit area and then head back to the motel. I turned around to see how far we had walked from the motel and saw those same two guys about 10 foot behind us. They saw me look back, and the younger guy immediately started yelling stuff, like I wasn't any fun, come back and have a drink, don't be a tease, and kept laughing. The laughter was the worst part. It was so sinister and unsettling. It made every hair on my neck stand up. That's when I realised there was no longer an abundance of people around, and they weren't just some dumb guys. There was something really wrong going on. I didn't want to turn around and walk right into them, so I nudged my sister and made the phone hand signal. She gave me the phone while we walked towards the next door. I looked back again and the guys were advancing towards us. They weren't running, but they were walking faster than usual. I looked at my sister, not even thinking about the phone in my hand, and all I said was, run. There were maybe 3 closed businesses between us and the next open shop. Fueled on pure adrenaline, we ran straight into the open front shop. I immediately noticed the cashier was with a customer and they had a TV mounted above the counter showing live feed security footage. I grabbed my sister's arm and we walked towards the back of the store and stood directly under the camera. The 2 men walked in less than a minute after us. They pretended to shop near the front of the store for a little while and never looked at us. At that point, we were pretty much staring at them, waiting to see what they would do. Eventually, they left, and we went to the counter and told the guy working what had happened. He told us we were welcome to stay as long as we wanted while he closed up for the night. We tried to call our mom, but she didn't answer. Being the dumb kids that we were, we decided to walk back to our motel after about 30 minutes. Our room was right under the sign for the motel, and we practically fell through the door when we got there. Our mom had fallen asleep in the hotel chair waiting for us. I had 2 other creepy encounters on that trip, but nothing as bad on that one. A few years later, I stumbled across an article about a missing teen girl. She was abducted from Myrtle Beach in April 2009. She's still missing, and nobody was ever arrested. Even more unsettling was that our motel was within walking distance of the one the missing girl was last seen at. My sister also pointed out that the missing girl and I looked pretty similar, which freaked me out even more. After reading up on it, I saw that a 20-year-old woman was almost abducted around a month after we visited, in the same area that we had encountered those men. I don't know if my experience in those 2 cases were related or not. I still wonder if it was the same people, and think about how easily it could have been me and my sister. I really regret not taking a picture of them in the store or calling the cops. I live with 3 friends in a student house in a university town. Guys are all great, but can get pretty damn rowdy sometimes. All of us are from a big city about 3 hours away from where we go to school. So over the summer, we're all away from our student house. It's generally pretty safe, and we've never had any incidents in the past. Last summer, due to COVID, my girlfriend and I were unemployed and decided to go up to the town where we both go to school. Now, her place was quite a lot nicer than mine, so we would usually stay at her place for the nights. One morning, I woke up to a call from my landlord. I remember him telling me, "Hi, yeah, so the police are on the way." At this point, I'm thinking one of my housemates must have come up and done some serious damage to the house. My landlord then tells me that someone broke into the house through a back window last night. I immediately get dressed and leave my girlfriend's house and head over to mine. When the cops show up, I go through the house to see what was taken. All the doors are broken down, and one of the knives from our kitchen is missing. After checking out what was taken, I eventually noticed that the missing kitchen knife was on the dresser in my room. I genuinely think if I was home, sleeping, whoever broke in would have stabbed me. I sat on a wooden bar stool behind the register in the nastiest gas station I've ever seen, before or since. It was my third night in a row on the graveyard shift, despite my constant pleas for daylight hours. At night, the place became purgatory. No matter how hard you'd scrub or how many times you'd mop, a thick film of filth remained on every surface. I would go hours without seeing a single car drive past. I often questioned if the rapture happened and I was the only one left. We were a stone's throw from another 24-hour gas station franchise. It was cleaner, properly lit, and had an equipment update within the last decade. Needless to say, I had a lot of downtime. It was midnight. I had 6.5 hours to kill. I was reading from the first volume of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and doing my best not to look at the clock. As I would soon learn, I was being irresponsibly unaware of what was going on around me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a brown wood panel station wagon pull up to a pump. Two men exited the car and walked inside. One looked older. He was wearing a leather jacket, the same shade of brown as his vehicle. The younger guy was close to my age. He wore a faded Carhartt coat and work boots. Both were covered in a layer of dirt or dust that suggested recent manual labour. These were country gentlemen. I greeted them and asked what I could do to help with. They told me that they're not interested in buying anything, but they had to stop by and make sure everything was okay here. I was appreciative, albeit visibly confused. The younger man asked me, "Did you know you're being watched?" as he subtly gestured outside. Sure enough, I saw the dark outline of a man standing completely motionless near a streetlight. None of his features were visible, but I could tell he was staring directly at us. The older man said they'd been driving around about 45 minutes earlier and almost hit him as he was standing in the middle of the road. He theorized the man was possibly on drugs. They decided to take the long way home that night to see if the guy was still hanging around. Mind you, this was 45 minutes after they almost ran the guy over. Had he been watching me the entire time? I looked outside again to find he hadn't moved a muscle. He was positioned on the border of the streetlight's illumination. I noticed his jaw was moving, like he was saying something. I asked the younger man to lock the deadbolt on the front door, literally my only line of defense in this situation. They both agreed to wait with me in the store while I contacted the police. Until that moment, I maintained composure, trying not to make it obvious that I felt extremely vulnerable. Here I was, at the mercy of three complete strangers, hoping the two I had in front of me were genuinely there to help. When the dispatch operator confirmed they had 2 units on the way, I felt safe enough to end the call. I thanked the 2 men profusely and they walked out the door. After pausing for a moment, they turned around and came back inside. The younger one plainly stated, "Lock the door, he's coming this way," then immediately ducks back out the door so I can lock myself in. As I flipped the deadbolt into position, I could see the dark figure moving toward the building at an intentioned pace, making it across the parking lot in about 10 strides. He tried opening the door, but found it wouldn't budge. He asked the older man, "Where did the girl go?" Who then tried to buy me some time by saying I was in the bathroom and I would be back in a minute. So this man, this possible assailant, walks around the corner towards the bathroom door and disappears behind the building. Of course, we didn't have cameras outside to keep employees safe on the job. The only 3 working security feeds happened to all be trained exclusively on where the cashier would stand. It felt accusatory. It was at this point when real fear began to set in, and I lost control of my composure. This unidentified man, who had apparently been watching me for close to an hour, was now laying in wait for me to exit the bathroom. I started to hyperventilate as thoughts of what his motivation could be. Had he been watching me before tonight? Was my store chosen at random, or did this guy come here because he saw a small female at the register? Was he actually on drugs? Or was he just mentally unstable enough for it to appear that way? Did he have a weapon on him? Or did he plan to use his bare hands for whatever he was going to do? I peeked out the window and saw the 2 gentlemen exchanging glances and muted discussion on how to proceed from there. Thankfully, a local police SUV tore down the street and into the parking lot of the building next door, turning on his flashers and quickly coming to a stop. As soon as I was absolutely sure the man was gone, I sat on the curb outside, sucking every last drop of nicotine out of my cigarette I held in a trembling hand. As if I telepathically summoned her, my phone rings with a call from my best friend. She said she was thinking about me and thought she would call to see what's up, since she knew I would be bored. All I could respond with was, "Get here now." 20 minutes later, all my roommates showed up in a pickup truck and stayed with me long enough to feel comfortable again. As anticlimactic as this ended, it could have definitely been a lot worse. I could have been robbed, raped, or murdered, or all 3. All because I wasn't paying attention. I'll never know the true will of that dark figure under the streetlights. Maybe that's for the best. I don't think I could easily get past knowing what could have lied in store for me. And I wish I could have gotten one of those gentlemen's contact information, so I could send a beef jerky bouquet or something manly that says thank you. So, dark figure under the streetlight, once you're out of the clink, let's never meet. My dad's side of the family is based out of southern Ohio. Once every year or so, my parents and I would make the 6-hour drive to visit my grandma and my dad's old friends. I dreaded these trips because of the excruciating boredom that was always involved. I was just a 7-year-old kid, an only child at that, with strict Catholic parents who refused to buy her a Game Boy. So I would jump at every chance to entertain myself. This usually meant going to the store with my mom or tagging along when my dad went to see his friends. One of my dad's friends, who we'll call him Dave, had 2 boys, Henry and Sean, both a few years older than me. When my dad went to visit Dave, I would be expected to go join in on whatever the boys were doing, which was mostly sitting in the basement playing some first-person shooter game on the big screen. On one of these occasions, I was getting bored of watching Henry and Sean shoot NPCs, so I suggested we play hide and seek. Henry agreed, but Sean demanded that we play with all the lights off. I was still afraid of the dark, so I whined about it, but Sean pulled the "It's my house" card, which is insurmountable as a kid. Henry and I found our hiding spots. Then the lights went off, and Sean began to count. 1, 2, Freddy's coming to get you. This was unsettling. After that, there was silence, and I waited. It wasn't long before the adrenaline started to build. I had felt the superficial disquiet that children feel in the dark many times before, but in this moment, I felt the full weight of terror. I knew in my whole heart that something was going to happen to me if I was found. I didn't know how long I stayed in my hiding spot, but eventually I was seized by survival instinct and bolted to the top of the stairs where light shined through the crack at the bottom of the door. I yelled, "I don't want to play anymore!" After being chided and called a baby, I was led upstairs to Sean's room with the promise that we were going to find something else to do. I didn't care what it was. I was just glad to be out of that basement. We entered Sean's room and Henry closed the door. I stood there, watching Sean dig through a drawer. In my head, he was looking for a game we could all play. I was wrong. He suddenly produced a large knife. He proceeded to open it, smile, and say, "I love scaring the shit out of civilians." He then started inching towards me with the knife in his fist. I backed up against the wall and started to panic, my face contorting and tears welling up. I began hyperventilating for the first time in my life. Henry stood to my left, blocking my only way out. Fortunately, he said, "You're making her cry, let her go," and opened the door. I ran as fast as I could into the living room and sat down by my dad's feet, still shaking and tearful. I didn't tell on Sean, fearing he'd try to get back at me for it. My dad didn't even notice the state I was in. He was absorbed in the episode of Cops that was on TV. I was thankful when we drove away from there. Years later, I was talking with my mom, and the subject of Dave and his family came up. I recounted the story, apparently for the first time, and she told me she knew all along that Sean wasn't right. She said one night, when our families were together having a bonfire, Sean caught a little frog. He began throwing it up in the air and letting it thud to the ground. Once he got bored with that, he started dangling it over the fire. My mom told him to stop, so he paused, looked her dead in the eye, and threw the frog in the fire. My mom said she'll never forget the sizzling noise the frog made as it was engulfed in flames. It's been years since our families have contacted each other. I think about Sean and Henry often. Part of me wants to check the Ohio criminal database and see if Sean has a record. It wouldn't surprise me. So Sean, knife-wielding hillbilly kid, let's never meet again.